MSTR going crazy. It's actually down. I think
one day.
It's still, going crazy.
The one day it's not up 100%.
Exactly. Everyone's been talking about MSTR. Like, is it overvalued? Is it not? What's going on? So, Michael Saylor posted this like a month ago. He said MSTR is a Bitcoin Treasury company backed by Bitcoin reserves, and puts this kind of graphic out. And I was like, I don't fully understand what this means. So I did some research, and we're gonna like break it down and kind of go into what's going on here. And the crypto maxis are like, Michael Saylor is a genius. This is going to be the next $1 trillion company. And then other people are like, this is dumb. So you can help me decide if we're bullish or not on MSTR. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So he says macroeconomy, technology, inflation, entropy. So he's saying that just kind of like high level, Bitcoin, there's the tech itself, but it's like a hedge to inflation. And then it's also like the result. So entropy, I guess, I didn't actually know what this meant, but I guess like a way to, like a mathematical way to like assess kind of randomness and risk. And so what he's saying is like his thing has always been that like the value of the dollar will continue to die. Like fiat currency always just gets printed and it will die. And that's why you need Bitcoin. And again, he says it provides capital preservation and productivity, and the sort of poor, so I guess even take a step back. MicroStrategy is a like B2B like software analytics company.
Right.
That's kind of how they made their money. They still do that.
Right.
But his whole thing is that they are like a big Bitcoin treasury. And so they're trying to utilize Bitcoin as a treasury reserve and as a financial growth engine. And he thinks that Bitcoin's positioned as both a hedge against economic uncertainty and a growth opportunity. And it's really interesting. And you can go to the next slide. He's essentially he's now like referring to his company as not denominated in like US dollars, but denominated in Bitcoin. So, which is like an interesting way to think about it. And he wants people, I guess, to think that like, that you're purchasing shares, your shares are like backed by Bitcoin based on the amount of Bitcoin the company holds, and they're going to continue buying Bitcoin.
Right. I think that's a smart play.
Yeah, and so they've raised money thus far, I think, through bonds mostly. Maybe I don't know if they've done some, stock, selling of their stock or whatever, but they've issued bonds. Then those bonds they're acquiring Bitcoin with. I'll get to this in the next slide. It's a very interesting like financial play, which is like, it took me a little bit to be like, oh, okay, I see what he's doing. But right now he's saying that he's assuming that Bitcoin will appreciate at annualized 25% per year. And essentially they're taking loans out at, I don't know what percentage, but as long as like the annualized return of Bitcoin is, higher than the loans, they're making like free money on that is what he's saying pretty much. And going back to like his macro view that like, we're making free money, but also acquiring Bitcoin, which is this, safe haven for the future.
Right.
So they so far have, and this was a month ago, could even be more now, 250,000 Bitcoin. And yeah, again, it's at 18 billion US dollars. Probably up, I don't know, 10% since then. And if you go to the next slide, this is where it all kind of comes together and is super interesting. And so what he is saying, when you think about MSTR being denominated in Bitcoin, you as an investor have different now like institutional investors.
Mm-hmm.
This is the whole thing. This is why, MSTR is like is part of why it's been going crazy. Obviously, crypto itself has been doing well, but it's this new like this product or a set of products that allows institutional investors to get into Bitcoin in many like further ways. So what he says is that, top to bottom, like high risk, high reward, you can take, have options and futures on MSTR. More moderate is just you buy the actual stock or spot ETFs. And the low risk, and this is what I think is super interesting, since they are issuing bonds in order to buy Bitcoin, you can actually purchase those fixed, income products. And it's the first ever kind of like Bitcoin-backed bond sort of thing is what he's saying. And it allows, I guess, institutional investors to have access to this like new product, which is kind of interesting.
Guys, it kind of seems like using Bitcoin as collateral seems to be a little bit of a strategy. So Lone thinks, maybe using Bitcoin as collateral isn't going to end too well for MSTR.
And that's obviously the risk, right? Like if it keeps going up, it'll work.
They're going to implode, and all you're going to see is Bitcoin is a scam. We told you, headlines everywhere.
Go ahead.
That's fair. Maybe I'm just too much in my own bubble. I kind of feel like Bitcoin and crypto is too far along for people to just throw out. It's a scam now. I feel like that was more last cycle. I feel like it's matured a little bit. I feel like by the what's it called? The endorsements by a lot of politicians, and just it being respected a little bit more and taken into account at the high level of business conversations, kind of feel like Bitcoin's in a place to where it's now more so not much of a question of is crypto or Bitcoin going to be around, but more of a question of like, yo, when do I get in? But I don't know. Maybe that's just me being in my own little bubble because I only talk to other traders and people that already believe in crypto. So maybe that a perception of Bitcoin and where it's at could be a little biased and not to reality as close as it should be. So
I was going to say something very similar, and pretty much to add on to that, what's very important to gauge is like what's the average price of their Bitcoin. I think it's at like I think it's at like 40K, 45K at average price of Bitcoin. So, right now, even if like imploding would be losing 50% of its value, and they'd still actually be right at their price of Bitcoin. So,
yeah,
I think this worked, and like at least they're in a good spot because they were buying Bitcoin in the bear market. Really, if you were getting
that was pretty. The fact that they were doing that then,
yeah,
I mean, that's risky for the shareholders too. Like that's a pretty big decision to even be buying that early.
250,000.
That's so crazy. I can understand that now, but doing that before this cycle that we're in now is crazy. Like you were really betting on Bitcoin, as a part of your own growth for your company before it was more established. So that's wild. That was a bet they took, and it might pay off. So
I also think like if you're like Michael Saylor, like you're already like a multi-billionaire. Like hopefully he has some cash that's not Bitcoin, and like it's kind of like, why not just go like YOLO, like max it out? If you're right, like if Bitcoin ends up doing what you think it'll do and becoming, some global standard or the new digital gold, like you have, I mean, they've got to be up there with some of the top Bitcoin holders on the globe. Like that's just going to be insane. And if you're wrong, like, I guess that sucks for your shareholders and stuff. But like, I'm sure you'll be fine.
Oh, everything will be fine. Everything. Oh, is that cool? No, yeah, I don't know. I know we're talking about MSTR specifically. You think there was other companies that were doing a similar strategy? I feel like we would know about them if that was the case, but MSTR seems to be just taking most of the headline space.
Yeah, my biggest thing here is that there's only going to be more like I think this is like interesting. I think if you're like whatever, like I believe in Bitcoin, you're buying a lot of Bitcoin like that. I think it's pretty simple to me. Like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Saying that you're like creating these new products, like you are right now, but it's only going to be easier for institutional investors to they already have access to the direct Bitcoin ETF. You're only going to have better ways to actually purchase Bitcoin itself. There will be more products created from that. So, it's cool that they're doing this now, but I don't see how like it, yeah. And if you're an investor, and again, like I think it always goes back to like, why wouldn't you just like buy Bitcoin or just like buy the ETF? I guess. Like, why would you buy MSTR? I don't know.